Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Board Gaming Doctor. My name is Phil, and I love to talk about board games. And in this video, I'm going to talk about my first impressions of the War of the Dragon, Wheel of Time, and the information that we know so far, and whether I'm going to back this or not. I really don't know what the title of this video is going to be or my decision, but I want to look through the information that we do have available since this game is quite interesting to me and to plenty of people. It's already made $500,000 already. So I am a fan of the Wheel of Time. I've read all the books. In particular, I'm a big fan of Brandon Sanderson, and that's what got me interested in the Wheel of Time, which I think influenced him to write his books anyway. But I know these characters, and have was really excited to hear about this a couple of weeks ago when it was announced to be on Kickstarter. And so, first of all, I do want to point out who is designing this game. I'm coming from this point of view as someone who really, makes content on board games. And I play a lot of, heavier, more complex board games. And so I was curious to see who designed these games. And since this game is coming from Direwolf, it's no surprise that Andy Claudius, who had a part in developing a lot of the Clank legacy games and other expansions, is a part of this project. Michael Mihilsik, who interestingly was a designer for Plays for All My Books, one of my favorite games to play with my wife. It's one of her favorite games right now. And then Ryan Schoon, who is from Man vs. Meeple, one of my favorite channels to watch on YouTube for board game content. And I watched their take on the gameplay. It's worth a watch to look at the art and some of the components for the game as well. But in any case, what I want to do is focus in on the rule book to kind of give us an idea of what the gameplay is going to be like. I think they had a very broad overview of the War of the Dragon game in the Man vs. Meeple video. I don't know if there are more videos that are coming to the Kickstarter. We'll find out. But for now, we do have the rulebook, which is, of course, in a work in development. And so the major thing about this game, and I'll go into some other comparisons later after we look through the rulebook, is that there are two modes to play in this game. There's a hero mode and epic mode. And you've got all these different components. You've got a ton of cards to draw from and to add to your tableau, and we'll get into the differences here too. But essentially, it's a two-player experience. One player plays as the light, the forces of light, and the other the opposite, darkness. And you each start off with an asymmetric starting deck, and on your turn, or I should say, uh, in the hero mode of the game, which is supposed to be the shorter variant of this game, you set up some mission cards out onto the board, and you draw a hand, I think, of 4 cards to begin with in chapter 1, and you play through 2 or 3 chapters, increasing your hand limit every time. And on your turn, you play a card onto a shared action board, and you choose one of these 5 main actions as well as activating the effects on the card that you just played. And there is an interesting twist where once you play a card to one of these 5 areas, these 5 actions, if an opponent wants to take that action later, they have to pay a cost to do so. And so it's got that element of understanding what you want to do and trying to beat out your opponent for the most, and being the most efficient with your action selection and prioritizing correctly in order to save resources. But in any case, what you do with these 5 main actions is you draw an ally card, or pay for an ally card from a market. You place it onto your tableau. Each card has icons, and there are like 5 different icons that you can play them to, which make your actions better throughout the game. And the interesting thing about this at the end of the game is if you have more of these icons than your opponent, you will score some victory points over your opponent for that. And so there is an element of tableau building and specialization that will have an effect on what points you have. You move your characters around the board, and you've got a heart, or sorry, a map of. I saw the heartland here. You have a map that you're moving your characters on, and in addition to movement, there are a bunch of rules. I'm not going to go over all of them right now. You can reinforce, and so you increase your strength of your characters. You recover allies or defeated characters and bring them back to the board. So there's some opportunity for movement as well. And in addition to movement, I should say, you can move into opponents' territories and trigger conflict. If you have essentially more power than your opponent, then you will move in and take that area. And so reinforcing can help bolster defenses so you don't lose an area to someone else's movement. And every area of the map is divided into sub categorizations of areas. And if you control more of that area, that section of the map belongs to your side. And that also deals with the end game points that you're going to get. And then finally, the consolidate, or the second to last action is consolidate, where you can gain resources to spend for, I believe that you might be able to spend this with allies. I'm not sure, but you do gain some resources to be able to spend elsewhere. You do are allowed to, for if you're playing as the shadow, to also spread corruption to progress up a track. You have a track advancement aspect to this game for both the light and the dark sides, and you will gain victory points essentially for how far you advance on those tracks. And then finally, you have the weave action, where you have a wheel, kind of a two dialed wheel that you're moving around on your tableau, and I think you get certain bonuses and victory points from those. And back to the mission cards, there are 2 missions that are placed at the beginning of each chapter. By like moving your wheel and moving your characters around, etc., you try to accomplish these chapters for points essentially, and you score. Yeah, so there's intermittent scoring for where you are on the map, what you control, and then finally, there are a bunch of other different cards and aspects to this game which are quite thematic as well, but also make mechanical sense, or should make mechanical sense as well. And then finally, you score for your tracks, your how your wheel is set up, and the pattern, which is the tableau, and however many allies you add to certain areas of your tableau. And if you have more than your opponent, you score. You also get to score for your leaders, resources, and then whoever has the most points wins. And so that, if it sounds pretty intense, that's only a portion of the game. The hero mode includes essentially, instead of a very simplified conflict resolution when you move into different territories occupied by an opponent, you do have a more tactical experience where you are fighting over, you have a blinder and 2 sides where you play cards and resources to have a tactical experience, kind of a lane battling, it looks like, experience to me. And so you take part in that throughout the game. And instead of where you just resolve whoever has the most victory points at the end of the hero mode, you do set up yourselves for the last battle, which is the big ending of the whole series of books. And you get to take part in a tactical battle experience with that as well. And so all of these rules are included there. A ton of pages to this book, almost 50. And so yeah, it's definitely a very intense game, especially for the epic mode. Now and then, you've got the last battle and different things. You can play your characters to different uh, different areas of the map, as well as are they going to be the vanguard, or are they going to be in the center or flanking, etc. And you kind of reveal where you blindly place these cards from your opponent and see and kind of resolve wherever you tactfully have allocated your resources. And there is a 4-player mode. I was wondering about this, if there was either going to be a 4-player or solo version of this game. And so you can play the hero mode with 4 players. It's essentially 2v2, 2 people on the light and 2 people on the dark side. And so there is that aspect as well. So yeah, so that is essentially the rule book and how the game, on a somewhat large overview of how it's going to be played. Finally, here are the prices of the game. So $90 for the base game, and the cardboard standees go up to 123 for the miniatures, and of course plenty of different add-ons that you can add to the game to make it even better. So this kind of goes into a thought that I've been having recently with Kickstarters. This really kind of, when I made my video on Brass Pittsburgh and looked at the prices for that game, the essential version versus the decked out, blinked out version of the game as well, it was quite expensive. And that is definitely a reflection of the economy these days. But, in addition to this, like, what we're offered here is a work in progress. It's probably a work in progress as compared, with the rule book that is pretty far along. There's probably some tweaking, whether it's big or small, that's going to happen still. And Brass Pittsburgh is still a work in progress as well. Like the rule book is pretty much done, but there are some tweaks to make the gameplay probably more balanced. And so there's that aspect of it. And I feel like because it is still a work in progress, I don't know, I feel like this has been happening a lot more recently with Kickstarter games, crowdfunding games. But not only are they more expensive, but the games themselves are not finished. And so, for example, 5-6 years ago, when I started getting into board games, I often saw that these games, during COVID, essentially these games that were being kickstarted had a tabletop simulator or some sort of digital option for people to observe and tinker around with to see if the gameplay was something that they liked, right? And I mean, there is no, first of all, there's no actual gameplay video of this game. We just have an overview from Man vs. Meeple. Hopefully, there are some more gameplay footage later on, even if it's preliminary. But we don't have that here, and we don't also have a tabletop version of this game or anywhere that we can try it for ourselves. It is a sharp-edged sword, double-edged sword. If a game is really good, you might not need to play it to back it. And of course, if you are a huge fan of this IP, then this game, and I will say, if you're not, a typical hobby board gamer, this game, might look complex, but I don't think you'll have to worry about it being a bad game. We have tried and true designers here who seem to be sticking very well to the theme of the game to make it feel like you are participating in the wheel of time, but also mechanically it's going to be a as streamlined and as balanced of a game as possible. And so I don't have any doubt about the game being good. But with so many good options these days, it's hard for me to reconcile what I used to be able to do, which was to try the games and decide if it was worth my money to have a physical copy of, essentially owning the best of the best, right? And so I don't have that option yet here for this game. And I would have loved to try it. Like I said, with a double edged sword, it's nice if a game you can try it out. And I think of some recent games that I played that had a tabletop version, like Sweetlands. I tried that solo and loved it and wanted to play more of it. And when it came back to Kickstarter, I backed it. There are other games that I've played recently too that did have a digital version of it, and I did not end up backing it because I didn't like the gameplay as much, and it didn't stack as well as it does to some of the other games that I have on my shelf, which is limited. And so I understand if publishers nowadays, especially that we're out of COVID and back to normal, we can you can go ahead and just release a rule book in progress or a video or two, and people would have to go on faith with what they have there and not play the games for themselves in order to buy it. But in addition to that, we know that this game will come to retail. It's coming from Dire Wolf. It's a very established company. They have a ton of games, Dune Imperium, Clank, etc., that are favorites in the hobby, and so there's no doubt that they have the resources to be able to bring this game to retail, whether it's fully funded or not, and it basically is. And so essentially, this Kickstarter is not to help the game come to pass. It's essentially here to allow people to get a more upgradable version of the game with miniatures and add-ons and things like that to make it a more special product for them, right? And so for those reasons, while I think and have faith that this game is going to be good, and it looks really, really great, like just from going through the real rule book, I think it's going to be an excellent game. So as far as comparisons go, too, before I continue, I mean, in the Man versus Meeple video, they compare it to games like Star Wars Rebellion, War of the Ring, uh, two-player versions of IP games that are kind of simulations or retellings of those types of games, somewhat on the complex end, but they're very thematic experiences, and this game kind of feels like that. For games that I've played personally, like I felt like I've played War of the Ring, the card game, the sequel to the actual board game War of the Ring. Kind of felt like that, where you are essentially playing cards to um, control different areas of the story of Lord of the Rings as you're progressing and controlling different areas that the book portrays in the game. And it also kind of like the lane battler aspect of the epic mode of this game kind of felt like, at first glance, it kind of reminded me of Air, Land, and Sea, where you're trying to play three different lanes, air, land, and sea, with cards. It's a simpler game, but you're trying to outmaneuver your opponent and kind of predict where they might want to go, or use feints and things like that to be able to win as many of those lanes as possible. The Old King's Crown also came to mind, with how you're supposed to kind of like place different resources and different lanes, and there's a big reveal, and you have the chance to bluff or predict what your opponent might do as well in a lane battler type of experience. That also kind of reminds me of this epic mode with that, but obviously in a different fashion with this game. So it does remind me of a lot of good games. But yeah, like, because this game is coming to retail, and I'm not the deepest fan of the Wheel of Time. I think if this were like the Brandon Sanderson game that's coming out later this year, I might consider the upgradable aspects of the game. But for me, I think I'm okay to wait. And so there are two reasons, right? One, because I know it's coming to retail, and since I don't have a chance to play it yet and really, get a good grip of how the strategy plays out in this game and how replayable and varied this game might be. But I know I'll get a chance to do so with the retail version, and I don't need the upgradable components, essentially. And then two, I mean, I play a lot of games solo. I love to play games with others, and I do play games with other people. But I to own a game and have it in my collection, I know I want to play it solo as well. And it's a lot of people play games solo these days, and there is no mention of a solo mode for this game. And so it would be hard for me to justify having this game with really no one else to play it with consistently, unless I wanted to do so on my own. And so the other twist to that reasoning as well is that with Direwolf, they do have a large digital library of their games. And so there is a good chance that War of the Dragon, if successful, would come to a digital format where you could play with people online or friends or family, etc., or even solo against a computerized opponent. And so I am willing to hold out for that as well. And those games are a fraction of the price that you would pay for the actual cardboard. And so that to me feels like the route that I'm going to take with this game. I am very intrigued and excited to play this game and see how well it does hold out in the long run, but I am willing to wait until next year to see when this does come to retail, and if it does get a digital version. And I'm sure someone, maybe officially they might pull out a solo mode for this game. Maybe they'll reveal that in an update. Who knows? And that would really that might persuade me otherwise with my decision right now. But I'm sure if not them, then someone would make a playable version of a that you could play by yourself to enjoy this game against a created opponent that makes it feel just as good as playing against someone else. And so I'm holding out for that. It's not going to come until next year anyway, and I'm happy to wait and see this game be successful. It's nice that it is successful. It's probably of no surprise, but yeah, I think I will wait for now, and hopefully that my reasoning and makes sense and helps your decision whether to back this project or not right now. So, yeah, those are my unscripted thoughts and reactions to the rulebook for this game, as well as what information we have on the Kickstarter. So, let me know what your thoughts. Let me know if you're going to back this game or not. And thank you for watching, and I'll catch you on the next one.